It started with the smell of coffee, not the scent itself. Michael always brewed his cup at 6:15 a.m., just like his father before him. No, it was the way the scent hit him that morning. Too early, too sharp, too familiar, and yet wrong. He had been dead for 43 seconds, flatlined. That's what the nurse had said, half whispered outside the hospital curtain after the seizure had stopped. 43 seconds, we got him back. They had called it a miracle. He walked out 2 days later with nothing but a headache, a red mark where the IV had been, and an overwhelming thirst for answers. But the answers didn't come, just questions. Quiet ones at first, then louder. The coffee was the first thing. Then came the mail. His electric bill had a different font, subtly narrower, the letters more crowded. His name, printed in all caps, used to include a middle initial. Now it didn't. He checked online. Same account number, same address, but his middle name was gone. Then his neighbor waved to him, using the wrong hand. Carol Hensley, 78 years old, retired teacher, arthritis in her left wrist for years. Now waving fluidly with it like nothing had ever hurt her. "Morning, Michael," she called, cheerful as always. He stood frozen on the porch, wondering when her limp had disappeared. A week passed, then 2. Michael began to catalog the changes, at first as a joke, a coping mechanism. He started a spreadsheet. By the end of the month, it had 113 entries. Entry number 14. His favorite diner, Pete's Grill, had always had green booths. Now they were burgundy. The owner swore they'd always been that way. Entry number 27. His high school mascot was the Wolves, except now, the yearbook from '95 showed the team as the Ravens. Same photo, same faces, different name. The changes were small but precise, never loud, never dramatic, just a gentle push here, a nudge there, reality with slightly different punctuation. He brought it up to his sister Laura over lunch. She laughed nervously, said maybe the coma affected his memory. "It was only 43 seconds, he said, setting down his fork. "That's not even a full minute." Laura gave him a strange look. "What are you talking about?" "At the hospital," he insisted. "I died for 43 seconds." She shook her head. "You were never dead, Michael. You had a seizure. They stabilized you, but your heart never stopped." That night, he called the hospital. The nurse who had spoken to him, Janine, no longer worked there. No one remembered the code blue. His medical record said, electrical disturbance, non-fatal. No mention of resuscitation, no flatline. The next morning, his spreadsheet was gone. Just a single file remained on his desktop, a plain .txt file titled, "You're Almost Home." Michael stopped trusting clocks. First the one in his kitchen, and that would blink 12:00 every morning even though the power hadn't gone out. Then his phone. The alarm would ring at the wrong time. The weather app stopped matching the sky. He bought a mechanical watch. Wounded himself, it too began to drift. People started calling him by the wrong name. Not strangers, co-workers, baristas, even his landlord. Small slips. Mitch instead of Michael. Anderson with 2 S's instead of 1. The nameplate on his office door had changed, but no one else seemed to notice. He printed old family photos, studied them. In one from Christmas 1993, his uncle was missing a scar he'd had since childhood. In another, his father's eyes were blue instead of brown. At night, he dreamed of static. Not images, just sound. A low hum like a distant generator. Always the same pitch, always pulsing like a heartbeat. One night, he woke to find his bedroom rearranged. Not dramatically, just mirrored. The nightstand was on the left instead of the right. The framed photo of his parents faced the other direction. His reflection in the dresser mirror blinked half a second too late. He whispered to it, "Who are you?" It whispered back, "Home." He smashed the mirror that night. He stopped going to work. He stopped answering the phone. The house no longer felt like his. Or perhaps he thought he was no longer the person who had lived in it. When he visited his parents' graves, their birth dates had changed. Not just the numbers, the months. His mother was now born in June, not March. His father had died in 2012, not 2014. And next to their headstones was a blank slab. No name, just the phrase, "Welcome back." He knelt in front of it, trembling. The grass felt too soft, the wind too scripted, like a set dressed for him alone. Behind him, someone whispered his name. Not Michael, not Mitch, just you. He didn't turn around. He started recording himself, hours of footage, just him, sitting, breathing, watching, hoping the camera would catch what his eyes could not. On the fifth night it did. At 3:17 a.m., the frame glitched, just for a second. When it resumed, Michael was gone. A man sat in his place, wearing his clothes, his face slack, eyes open. But the eyes were wrong. They were empty, like placeholders. The man on the tape stood, walked to the camera, and leaned close. The frame cut to black. The next morning, Michael awoke on the floor. The camera was broken, the files deleted. But in the mirror, taped to the glass, was a note in his handwriting. "You are the error. You are the overlap," he remembers now. Michael packed a bag, drove for hours, checked into a motel under the name Matthew Olson. He dyed his hair, removed his social media accounts, threw away his phone. And still the front desk clerk smiled and said, "Welcome back, Mr. Anders." He asked the woman next to him at breakfast if she knew the time. She answered, "The same time it was yesterday." The TV in the corner flickered. The news anchor looked into the camera and said, "There are things that should not return." Michael ran. He drove until the road became gravel, then dirt, then forest. He parked, hiked into the trees, and stayed there for days. No phone, no name, just silence. One night he woke to find a clearing in front of him, and himself sitting in a chair. Not a mirror, not a twin, just him, smiling. The copy raised a hand and said, "There you are. I've been keeping your life warm." Michael turned and ran, but every path brought him back to the chair. The copy stood. "It's time to stop resisting." Michael fell to his knees. The air thinned. The trees leaned inward. His vision swam. The last thing he heard before everything blinked out was his own voice, not echoing, not distorted, just calm, confident. "Shh, it's okay, I'm real now." He woke up in his bed. Sunlight through the blinds, coffee brewing in the kitchen. The mirror reflected him perfectly. The calendar showed the correct day. His phone rang. Laura, his sister, calling to check in. He smiled, answered, said he was doing just fine. But in the background, in the reflection of his phone screen, a second Michael stood, and he was still smiling. Weeks passed, then months. Michael, or the one who called himself that, moved through life seamlessly, paid bills, shopped for groceries, called his sister once a week. But every so often in the corner of his eye, he would catch something, a shift in shadow, a blur where nothing should be. One day, walking past a mirror in a department store, he glanced and saw the other him again. Standing still, hands at his sides, expression calm, not threatening, not sad, just waiting. That night he dreamed of standing in front of a mirror that stretched for miles, in every reflection himself. But only one version blinked. starts sweating. The sheets felt unfamiliar, the walls were too white. He checked the mirror. Nothing unusual. He smiled, but he didn't blink. Miles away, deep in a motel room off a forgotten highway, a man sat in the dark, staring into a cracked mirror. He couldn't remember his name. He couldn't remember why he ran, but he remembered a face, and it looked just like his. He whispered, "I'm still here." And the mirror whispered back, "For now." He began to see signs in strangers' faces. Not recognition, imitation. The barista repeated his order before he said it. The mailman called him by name before he introduced himself. Children stared at him for too long. Dogs growled as if unsure whether to bark or cower. On a park bench one afternoon, a woman sat beside him. She was knitting a scarf in a color he had dreamed about but never seen in real life. Without looking up, she said, "You're bleeding through." He turned. "Excuse me?" She continued knitting. "This isn't yours, it never was, but you held on. That creates echoes." He stood confused, walked away. When he turned back, she was gone. No one in the park had seen her. That night, he found a single stitch of that scarf color in his coat pocket. He tried to throw it away. It returned the next day, tucked in his wallet between his license and a receipt from a store that didn't exist. He stopped trusting reflections. Then he stopped trusting memories. Then he stopped trusting himself. But even as reality thinned, one thing remained. Someone was always watching. And one day, they would step in. He left a journal behind. One entry written in careful print. If you wake up and the sky is a shade too pale, if your coffee tastes too familiar, if your name feels like an echo instead of a sound, don't speak. Don't run. They'll know you noticed. Below that, in a different hand, shakier, frantic. He smiled at me today. I think I'm fading. The journal was found by a maid at the motel, tucked beneath the mattress. The room had been rented under no name, no ID, no record, only that sentence, and the mirror, stalwarts, cracked down the middle. Now and then new guests claim the mirror flickers at night. They say they see someone else in it. The motel staff just laughs it off. But the housekeeper, she won't go in after sunset. She says the man is still there, waiting. And one day when someone looks too long, he'll remember which side he's supposed to be on and walk through. You may have seen him too. A man in a coat, face too neutral, gaze too still. Maybe you passed him on the street. Maybe he stood at the edge of a crowd in an old photo. Maybe he watched you through a shop window that no longer exists. Don't wave. Don't follow. And above all, don't look twice. Because once you do, once you see him clearly, he sees you too. And from that moment on, you're living on borrowed time, just like Michael, just like all the others. And someday soon you'll hear a knock at your door or see a glitch in your smile. And then you'll understand what it means to come back, wrong. Because some people don't return from the edge alone. Some bring something with them.